kind of always positioned this as like purpose and business and entrepreneurship and ideas and stuff. And I love the fact that like our podcast episode is going to be like, do less.
Don't be a doorstop. Don't be a doorstop. Don't be a doorstop.
And welcome back to Don't Be a Doorstop. We have some interesting topics to talk about. We've actually got bullet points this week. Woo! Need sound effects as well. So I think we're looking into. Shall I do a summary of what we're going into? Tease the audience.
Yeah,
so we're looking at meetups, indie hackers / Superbase, and faith, rest and receive. So we'll jump into those three topics. I feel like we need one of those wheel things that we can just spin and then see which one we land on first.
Yeah, which topic do you want us to speak about first, isn't it? So, well, first item on the list is probably the best one to speak about first, isn't it? So I have been enjoying finding my people, as they would say. You know, finding your people when it comes to the mindset or hobbies and kind of like ways of working, like approaches to life and so forth. So over the past few months, and I guess this has like been a bit of a change, you know, when you're trying to find people of the same mindset, so whether or not that's like entrepreneurial or like ideas or positivity, and you want to find a group of people because it takes a lot of energy to keep those kind of like characteristics up. So basically I looked at the technologies that I use and the tools that I use, and I wanted to find people that also use the same things. And that's how I got into like hackathons. I'm not sure if I mentioned on the pod, but I submitted 2 entries to 2 separate hackathons. And the first hackathon I got silver, and then the second hackathon I got gold. And I think just even that process of putting yourself out there, especially when it comes to code, because I've always felt like my code might be critiqued and they might think I've done it really badly or something. So putting yourself out there, funnily enough, no one cares, right? They just care about how it works, generally speaking, as a concept, as an idea. And that's been really good. And then some other network that I've kind of like jumped onto as a recommendation from the first network, like they even asked me to speak. So going back to like, you know, when they say like build your own table if you're not being invited to speak or something, they actually were like, hey, do you want to speak at one of our meetups? And that was a lot of fun because that's the first time I've, again, done like a tech talk of some sorts, not TED talk yet, a tech talk, which again is a bit scary because you don't know what these people are probably smarter than you and they're probably going to ask like difficult questions, but it's fine, right? Like they did ask questions and they weren't hard to answer. And worst case scenario, you could say, oh, that's a great question. I don't actually know, right? I'll be able to find out for you or something like that. So that's been really good. And a recommendation from that group was something called Indie Hackers London, which is predominantly like the day-to-day is like a Slack group, but they do have meetups. I've missed the meetups so far. And they've recently released this leaderboard of things that you've shipped. So shipping something means like deploying something to a website. So getting something from not being live to live so people can use it. And they have this leaderboard. So every time you chime into this channel, it like puts you on the leaderboard and it has your like daily strike, a daily, not strike, daily streak. That's the word, streaking. So that's, I've only been doing that for like a week and I've already noticed that this angle of like competition / accountability is helping me focus, and I'm almost kind of like doing work to be able to submit into the leaderboard to be regarded as somebody that's kind of like shipping a lot, which is interesting because I'm not in competition with them as such. It's more so if I'm known as this entrepreneur and this like indie hacker or this guy that develops stuff, like how often am I doing that? And the regularity of it almost is consistent with the label. So you can't call yourself an indie hacker if you're not shipping, aka, right? That's how my brain is kind of like feeding it and approaching it. So I'm like, to be viewed as a fully fledged indie hacker and not this like hobbyist, like, oh, I've just joined this group for just fun. Like posting regularly is giving me like tricking my brain into thinking, oh, I can now call myself, which ultimately actually is an insecurity, right? That I don't feel good enough to be able to call myself just because, like, even if I didn't ship. but I'm tricking my brain into basically getting myself into a place of efficiency in some ways.
That's cool.
And then like the third group,
So
really
can I
love
push
a
on
podcast.
there? What is
Sorry?
it? What is an
Yeah.
indie hacker? Because I've come across it, but I wouldn't be able to explain it to anyone.
Yeah, great question. I don't know. I'll find out. No, I'm joking. Indie hacker stands for independent hacker, or like indie games, which again are like independent games. So it's this concept that typically they're synonymous with like nomads. Nomads are kind of like digital people that travel and create tools. And indie hackers are essentially the same. It just doesn't have the travel aspect as much potentially.
Sort of like a sole trader more than a company type of vibe.
Yeah, they're a bit more like in that realm of, well, it's a kind of range, right? They're in the realm of freelancing, like side hustles. They might have fully fledged projects that are full time, but they have full ownership of it, or they've built it themselves or something. So indie hacker, nomad, digital nomad, they kind of like blend. You either do travel a lot and jump around, or you don't, but it's predominantly kind of like you're not owned by anybody else. You're your own person and you're building your own things. That's essentially it. But yeah, good question. Nice. I forgot I didn't explain. But yeah, the third and final group I've like really enjoyed networking in is My First Million. My First Million is a podcast. There's this startup that have generated kind of like community groups based off popular podcasts. So they've taken like My First Million. They've also taken that Brian Johnson guy, you know, the guy that's like tweaking everything about his life to kind of like basically not die. Like he's a really, really interesting person. So this startup is spinning off community groups off the back of like famous or popular podcasts. And it means that people in London are arranging meetups because we all like the same thing, but it's not facilitated by the creator. Like the My First Million guys are not doing it. It's like we're doing it because we enjoy the podcast and we want to meet other people that are like-minded. So that's been like really good to, again, meet people of a similar mindset, positivity, ideas, inspiring, like wanting to do a little bit more than the just standard kind of like house, dog, kids kind of approach. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed that basically.
That's cool. Do you know how many people are in the area that are interested in those certain podcasts? Does it give you a bit of a number? Quite cool.
I can't remember because they're just events. It's like 30 people have decided to come to this event. In the Slack group, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people. Again, there is this like good Slack integration, which like triggers every week to connect you with one person in the group into like a direct message. So it's introducing you to somebody like, hey, meet Tom, meet Tom. Like, hey, you're in this group now, like chat to each other or arrange a meetup. And if you do, great. If you don't, that's fine. We'll automatically sync you up with somebody else next week. So you just tell them, did you meet or did you not meet? And I found it really interesting meeting people through that format, essentially like forced, kind of like speed dating vibes, right? Like forced indie hacking speed dating. And it's not always about wanting to get something out of the other person. Sometimes it's just like, awesome, you're doing your thing, let me celebrate you, and I'm doing my thing and you celebrate me kind of thing. It's not that we're trading anything as such. So yeah, I found that really helpful, really helpful.
That's cool. It's probably quite nice because it's randomized as well. You sort of don't really know what will come from it. So it probably feels like a bit more of an adventure rather than you going to either deliberately make a friend or deliberately go for a client. You're in that space of actually you don't know, which is probably quite fun to figure out. Could it be one or the other or neither? A lot more.
It's the possibilities.
The possibilities are endless.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I also found the leaderboard stuff inspiring for like our to-do list leaderboard and how already it spurred me on. So I know we've spoken about, putting a leaderboard in our to-do app. I know that we have an unofficial one. And it's funny because as soon as we...
I've not posted on Twitter this week.
yeah. Like it's that kind of like a little bit of healthy competition goes a long way. So I definitely need to build a leaderboard for the to-do list. Yeah. So then we can have that accountability and kind of competition. So yeah, that's kind of like encouraged me, I guess, a little bit on that.
That's cool. Yeah, because I was thinking it would be quite cool. And even just the element of, I think for being the creators of the To-Do app, knowing how much everyone has found the app helpful in the sense of they have completed 1,000 tasks and broken down 200 tasks and got stuck on 50 tasks. You're like, sweet, actually, we've enabled those 1,000 tasks to be hopefully easier for those individuals because they're still coming to the app.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the sort of hope in that regards, which is good.
And if we're in the list, I can see, so the guy that created it, it says like brackets moderator, and I can see that he's on top of the list, and I'm like, I kind of want to beat him because he's the owner, right? And if I'm better than the guy running the show, like that'll be pretty cool. So there's this.
Is it whoever's at the top of the list is the owner of it? That's
keep
at the top of the list.
Yeah, 100% shares on it. But there is no prize. It's just like bragging rights. And again, like it's funny how if you can play on somebody's like egos a little bit, then it works quite well. So for bragging rights, like for example, with us lot using Insider, Kimmer uses Insider, you and I use Insider, and then there's a bunch of other people. Now it really feels like the three of us are actively using it in like a super intense way, like 100 tasks plus kind of thing.
Oh, right, about to do. You make some products now. You said Insider.
Did I? I meant to say to do.
Subliminal messaging people with other products.
Insider. So it's funny how the three of us, because we know that, okay, like I think at one point, like you were first, I was second, then Kimmer, and then Kimmer's come into second place, and then I was first, and then now Kimmer's first, kind of thing. And it's funny how that's like encouraged and spurred on that competition-esque like angle, as it were, which is funny, really funny.
It is funny. It seems like you've washed off your.
I was going to say we need a better producer of our mugs because it's like all faded on my mug. So anytime somebody's like, it's because I put it in the dishwasher. Are you hand washing yours?
No, I just don't. I've not used it regularly.
You don't use it much. I obviously use it. Yeah, it's either a sign that I use it a lot, which I do, or it's I shouldn't be dishwashing it. I should be hand washing it. But every time I try and show people, they're like, "Don't be," and then they can't really see the word doorstop.
You should just doodle with a Sharpie each week, a different style.
Yeah, probably like
to keep the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, a whiteboard marker type thing on it. So
and then it'll just wash off, and then you just have to start again each week.
Yeah, recreating a endless creativity of things until I like forget and I just like hold on to it like this, and then I have a bunch of marker on my hand. So yeah, because actually a Sharpie probably would work on it, right? If I did it in a Sharpie, it probably wouldn't wash off if I put it. It would probably like wear away over time, similar to the print anyway, isn't it? So
yeah, I think it would. It would be a short-term fix. Short to medium, depending on how much you wash it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go rogue. I've not got these as bullet points, but anything else that you've been like thinking about, or any other ads on, like when it comes to like community groups and finding your people or anything?
I think that's the thing. It's just it's easy and it's hard at the same time. I feel because it feels like life's gone in a direction that there's so much customization. Because I was thinking this the other day of like, in the past, everyone pretty much probably used to watch, you'd either have Cartoon Network, Fox Kids, or Nickelodeon. So you'd always have those reference points of talking about SpongeBob, everyone would know. But these days, you can talk about SpongeBob topics, but more newer, and they might have not even come across it just because of different algorithms and stuff like that. So actually, it's harder to communicate a topic. So then you have to then, like what you're saying, is going out and search for that. But then you find out actually there's more hardcore fans to some extent. It feels like everyone's in a camp rather than everyone enjoys it for what it's worth. It's like, no, you would tap into a streamer that's got like full on SpongeBob SquarePants wallpaper and everything. So it is really interesting. And I think it is that it's handy to, I think I quite like that Slack thing, forcing you to mix with different people as well, because it's making sure that you're not just tunneling yourself to one community group where actually people do have joys and passions spread around. But sometimes when something's on your brain, you can just talk about To-Do app because that's on my brain right now. But actually, I've got a hobby of hockey and that over there. But that's what's helped me is it's just joining a club locally, because I know each week you've got that accountability of either training or match that you're like cool, I'm plodding along with playing hockey and that type of thing. So it's quite useful in that regards.
It does make me think that the methodology or like the systems of meeting people. So if you go to a new town or a new city or something, like universities are great because you're kind of like forced into it. So it happens. And essentially a lot of the time you network around a particular joint like experience or activity. But like outside of those like forced situations, like these like tech meetups or like events. So like a couple of weeks back, we went to a music event, which was really good. You can't speak to everybody in the room. So people have done these like mobile apps so you can see who's in the room and then you can speak to them. But to some degree, you kind of want the enjoyment of non-digital interactions. So doing this kind of like forced meetup, which is essentially the, like, what's that dating thing where you're like, you've got 2 minutes to chat to people, speed dating, right? I think the speed dating model, as in like a bunch of people, 2 minutes switch, 2 minutes switch. I think that's like probably is the best way to meet people generally. I mean, they've done it with dating. So why would it not be done with business and hobbies and stuff? So I'm like, it kind of like makes sense, especially when, you know, if you go to a pub, a lot of the time you'll sit with the same table, get to know that table, and then you can't really move because there's not enough room or whatever, or you'll feel rude kind of like getting up and moving somewhere else. So if you had like initially like 10 minutes worth of speed dating, then like, cool, we all now know each other to some degree. You can now free reign chat to everybody in your own way. And I think that's like interesting.
Unless the pub is a fan of Futurama and just yells out change places.
Well, maybe that is it. It's kind of like every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes, you kind of have this like forced change places. So then you are forced to mix, forced to do. And I guess it's like, I know it might be difficult for like introverts, but you hope that like 10-minute, 5-minute, 2-minute interactions are okay with them. You know, it's shorter. 2 hours. Yeah, absolutely. Like mustering up the energy for that. And also then they don't get dominated by extroverts dominating the conversation. Although I think the best kind of extrovert is somebody that can like have a group conversation and bring people in as and when they have the energy to like muster in with an answer or
because I did spot recently just in Ross-on-Sea how they've got a bench that's basically like if you want to have a chat, sit on this bench, but it's got it in English and in Welsh. And I was like, the difficulty with that is what if someone wants to practice their Welsh sitting on it, or just can only speak Welsh, and someone that just can only speak English, actually they still can't talk to each other. So to some extent, it would be handier to have them separate, not to pull people apart, but just to bring the clarity of, or even just like a system of like, if you sit on this side first, it means you want to speak Welsh. If you sit on this side, so then you've got less of a miscommunication when really you might just genuinely want to just chat to someone because you feel low or lonely, or just you fancy a chat with someone, which is just interesting.
The third angle, which is like somebody can't read English, somebody can't read Welsh because they have another first language, and they sit on the Welsh bench thinking, oh, it must be some inscribed, kind of like in memory of, it must be some inscribed, like in memory of this person kind of thing. And they sit on it and somebody starts speaking Welsh. And
they're getting really annoyed that everyone's talking to them.
Yeah. I just want to eat my fish and chips alone, or whatever they end up doing. Insert stereotype thing to do on a bench in North Wales.
But yeah, it is very interesting.
Another thing that I've been thinking about recently, with obviously doing Insider and the journey of that. So in January, we did a press release and got some press coverage, which was great. It bumped up our numbers, one on signups and also just like attention generally. So we have over like 1,300 users now, which is great. And also the leads that we've got from that, and leads are like connections, right? The people that have reached out to us off the back of seeing us online and wanting to have conversations with us, which is really, really interesting. We've had people from America, we've had people from Nigeria kind of like reaching out, wanting to connect. And I found that really, really interesting. And I'll be honest, like at the start, I wasn't that bothered about PR, right? But Kim had the energy for it. So I was like, cool, like you do it. And now it's really like resorted in some like really, really interesting conversations that I can't like properly share about yet because they're in the works. And I think with like many things, there's like two, and even building a product generally, there's like two pathways. There's one pathway where I get super anxious about trying to get more people on the app and super kind of like, oh, I've got to do this, and kind of like uptight about it all. Or I get to enjoy it, the fact that I don't get uptight and do things where I have the energy for, and in this sense of like flow and rhythm, where things might initially be slower or perceived slower, but then ultimately they result in things that you could not have facilitated yourself. So for example, yes, we do this PR thing. We can't then control whether or not somebody sees it that's of interest, that it's of interest to them and they are of interest to us. And then they reach out and then we have a meeting with them and it goes really well. And then they passes on to another team, kind of like second in line to be like, cool, now these guys are going to make the decision. And then that goes really well. You know, like I can't control that. I can't facilitate that. I didn't even know about this individual. So again, when we kind of bleed in like faith and God into this stuff, it's like, there's going to be this one, like done in your own energy and your own velocity and your own strength. And there's one where you basically like trust God has good things for you and knows best and can help facilitate this stuff and bring people to you, in this kind of like favor way, which is basically like good things happening to you, just because, not because you've done anything. And I find it's like fascinating when you're on the side that's like quote unquote easiest, kind of like enjoying the fact that you can look over to the other side and be like, yeah, there's another pathway where I'm super anxious, and think about it. So for example, I was watching a video of this startup lady. She runs this app to log, where people have 0-hour contracts and stuff, to log their like timesheets and like when they're working and so forth and get their pay and all the rest of it. She's done a bunch of rounds of investing. And before that, she was telling her origin story. And she said she emailed 2,000 people to get like 70K, right? So, or out of the 2,000 emails, it resulted in 70K's worth of like investment for her to carry on her business. She actually, her business across the time that it's been around, I'm not sure how long it's been around as such, but there was 6 times when nearly they went bust. So I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. So let's take that, send 2,000 emails. There is a version of me that also sent 2,000 emails and also got a result. But there is also a version of me that sent 0 emails. And from this PR gets this one guy that then results in something greater than that. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm enjoying the fact that I've not had to send 2,000 emails because I have in the past sent loads of messages and I know what that's like. And it was like, in life, how can you carry on being in this pathway of like ease versus anxiety and kind of like, you know, grasping really hard on kind of like formulating the outcome. And I guess when we come to like talking about God or faith, sometimes we can create things like in our own control. So for example, studying hard and getting 12 A's or 12 A stars or 12 9s or whatever, because I think they use numbers now, don't they? Like, is that relying on God or not? Because ultimately you were able to do that yourself. So are there pathways in your life where you know you can't do it and basically you trust in God for it, and not try to control or orchestrate because you are somebody that is skillful, generally speaking. So you can kind of pretend that God exists almost, but it's actually your hard work has achieved those 12 A stars, as it were. And when it comes to a moment where you have to basically go beyond your skill level, because like, oh, your skill doesn't have this like rooftop, so you have to trust in the universe or trust in God in my context anyway. Like, it's a really fascinating, like, yeah, just dynamic of things. Yeah, I've laid it on thick, but maybe you can pull out a couple of things that inspire you.
I think it's that. I think for our case, knowing that God is for you because he's a loving father, he's a loving entity, definitely helps, because then you're submitting to a greater power that has the best for you to some extent. And it even brings more light of, let's say that PR stint didn't work, that you can learn something from it, develop from it. So it's sort of a double-edged sword in that regards, that you don't need to strive too much. You can put it doesn't mean don't do anything, it's put your input in, but to some extent don't strive in the areas that you have no control. You're handing over the control, and actually, regardless of what the outcome is, good things can come from it. And I think that's always a nice thing, because it could be, there was a spelling mistake in it, so actually I need to go back to the drawing board and potentially get a writer to write up the PR thing because I didn't realise there was a spelling mistake. And that's the thing, is like recognizing that you're not putting all the what's the word, pressure on like it to work ASAP. It brings an element of stillness and calmness, that it'll happen when it happens type of element, that you try your hardest. If it doesn't quite work, that's cool. It could be a timing thing, because at the end of the day, if you created AI before the internet, it's worthless and no one would know about it. And it's that interesting thing of sort of, I guess, the ebbs and flows of life, of recognizing when is something useful and valuable, that something might be sort of pulling on your heart to be like, sort this out now, but it might not be needed for the world, let's say in 10 years time. And that's okay. It's just going, cool, follow that gut feeling that it's like, yes, I need to plod along here. Because I came across a guy that was I think he was like a game developer or something, and he was making loads of games. And the point was, he was just creating a game and just learning from it, just mini games. But then someone did a comment on one of the games going, this could be a really good, I think like a horror film or something. So then he came up with a different idea and then went down the horror film, and then now has created different horror things and has become famous via that. And that's the thing, it's those sort of interactions, those sort of knocking of heads or bumping into people that could just push you into the right sort of direction in that regards, because you're not, I guess, putting all the pressure in striving in your own energy, that actually there is an element of, things working out, but you don't know how people are going to interact or want to help you out or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the mindset of positivity. And how can you create a mindset of positivity? Because you know what you're relying on, right? And it's the kind of like, how can you be positive? Well, you're positive because you know that this individual is like trustworthy or reliable. Like, you know the character of that individual, and you know them well enough to be able to rely on that as like optimism for going forward and doing things. And I think it comes with overstretching, right? Overstretching is such a great phrase. When you realize you're overstretching, or like you said, like striving, it's trying to get back into a place of like ease. And it doesn't mean laziness or inactivity or like doing nothing. It's about doing things kind of like in collaboration with God, or the kind of the general vibe of good boundaries and good kind of like energy, rather than it being sapping you. And it's absolutely countercultural to the hustle thing, because ultimately the narrative generally right now is, if you're not a CEO by 25, then you failed, right? Like this whole like achievements for public kind of like display of those achievements for other people's opinions, and also the like work hard. And the reason why people succeed is because they've worked harder than you. And I think it's like, it's a blend. And I think what's countercultural is like, can you do less? And doing less, which essentially means you do the fewer things with more intentionality. And I think that seems to work better rather than doing more. Yeah. But of course, that's counter what the larger narratives are around hustle and working really hard and have this side hustle and so forth. So yeah, it's a really interesting blend of just like a complete different approach, which on the face of it doesn't feel right because we've been told these narratives to work hard and do these things and have these side hustles and so forth. But you do realize as soon as you lean back and kind of like trust in the process, which is this different approach to life, you see the rewards, aka you start to realize, oh, I didn't have to send 2,000 emails. Like, oh, the enjoyment of the fact that I didn't feel anxiety through this journey. And you kind of like enjoy the fact that those things are now not a part of the day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that has been really, really helpful just to have a better like approach. Yeah, for sure. And more energy.
That's really good. So what are we leaving with homework for the listeners that have listened this far?
I would say do stuff that don't make sense, aka do less. Right? Do the non-anxiety version of it, of this like hustle culture. And I guess it's more than one thing, but it is, where can you do less, essentially?
Where can you do less?
What would be your takeover? Take home.
I think it is that element of not only doing less, but being more present. Because I think sometimes it's sort of as if you're being more aware. If it's just the textures of the carpet in the floor or whatever that might give you a different idea, it's not only doing less, but it's sort of grounding yourself in that process.
Yeah. I love the fact that, we've kind of always positioned this as like purpose and business and entrepreneurship and ideas and stuff. And I love the fact that like our podcast episode is going to be like, do less. And I think it's good because that's an important side of it sometimes. Be present, do less. And on that note, keep hammering those nails. Bye for now.
Bye.